Okay, we're going to start a new project, and I'm going to be painting this project, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. This was my original design, and I just did it on a little wooden box that I got at Hobby Lobby, and it was already this color, so I just put my design on the top. Today, I'm going to be painting it on one of my surfaces, and I love painting on these surfaces because you can paint both sides of them. I've already painted a rooster on this side, and so I'm going to paint the witches in on this side. And I keep easels throughout the house, and I can change, what I have from room to room without putting holes in the wall, and set it where it is that I would like to have it sitting. So what I have done to start this, first of all, my original one, I base coated the background with olive green, and then added some colors in with that. But this one, I have base coated mine with ultramarine blue, and I just rolled on 2 coats with a foam roller. It's completely dry now. These little spots that are on here are from when I got paint on the back side of it when I was painting the rooster. I did not cover this side, which is something I normally cover it. So what I have done on this side is I've taken some press and seal wrap, and I pressed it onto here, and then I took a razor blade and a self-healing mat and cut around it and trimmed it as close as I could. And now I've just lightly sanded it with a very fine sponge sander. Gotten any rough texture off. So now to get started on this, I've laid out on my palette some ultramarine blue, some calypso blue, some lavender, and some olive green. I don't know which of those colors I'm going to use, but I'm going to try a new little technique on this background. I wanted to just change this up a little bit. I added a few things to this pattern, so it's going to be a little bit different and a lot of fun to paint, I think. Now I've just got here a little container that I got from a restaurant, when they put cheese or something in it, and I cleaned it out, and I just keep it to keep my extender in. So that's what we're going to brush onto this now, is some extender, and we're just going to cover the whole thing. You don't want it soupy wet on here. If after you get it on it looks like there's a lot standing on top of the surface, you want to take a dry paper towel and wipe it back, because you don't want it to be real thick on here, because if it is, it will thin your paint down more than you want it to, and it will take much longer for it to dry. Drying time extender allows your paint, gives you time to work it, and allows time, so that it doesn't dry as quickly. Therefore it's called extender. So I'm just going to kind of wipe my brush off, to get the excess extender out. And now I'm just going to go pick up some calypso blue, and I'm just going to kind of start slip, slapping, blending. Let me see if this is very wet. Okay. I think it's going to be alright. If I see that the paint is not, if it's thinning out too much, then I will take my paper towel and lightly, so I just got a little bit on my brush, maybe a little bit more than I want, so I'm just going to, I'm coming back on the handle of the brush, and I'm just going to kind of slip slap this color in there, a little bit here and there. I'm not really sure how I want my background. I know this is going to be kind of sky up in here, so I might want to keep some of these lighter colors up in here. So now I'm going to wipe my brush off and go get some lavender. I'm going to put some of that on here. Now this lavender may kind of fade down into it a little bit more. I'm just going to get these on here, just kind of play around, dabbing them on here. And Now I want to put some of the green down here towards the more bottom of it. Not too much, because this is the green that I have in the pot. It's, you know, that's oozing over the side. So now I'm going to pick up the base coat in my brush. And now I'm just going to start kind of slip-slap blending this. And I've got all those colors kind of in my brush, and that's alright. I want to just, I'm just barely tickling this to get some, you know, get it kind of softened down in there. I'm not really blending it back into the background. Now some of this is starting to dry a little bit, so I am going to put a little bit of extender in my brush, because I don't want that getting hard lines in there. And I think I may have to turn my ceiling fan off. That might be one of my problems. It has been kind of warm here today, so I've got my fan on, and I think I may need to turn that off. Now I've got some blotchiness going on down here. I don't like that, so I'm going to pick up the base color and just kind of, I know that the pot is going to go right over that, so I'm not going to give that a whole lot of tweaking, but I just want this to kind of look like an eerie sky almost. So I'm just right now picking up the color that I based it in, which was ultramarine blue. Get a little extender on my brush, kind of work it in. I'm using a very large filbert brush. This is a 1-inch Royal Fusion filbert. Very good brush for base coating. I know on the camera it looks more splotchy than it does right here in front of me. A little bit of extender. And I just want to blend that out a little bit. But it doesn't look as splotchy here in front of me as it does when I look to see how it looks on the camera. So I just want you to be aware of that. The lighting and stuff creates, you know, different glares and highlights on it, so I just want you to be aware that it doesn't necessarily look splotchy to me. Okay, continuing to pick up some extender and just, I'm having to use a little bit more extender than normal because of my ceiling fan. And I think when I go dry this, I'm going to turn my ceiling fan off. Alright, I want some more greens down here. Ooh, got too much green. Get some of that blue in there. Tone that down a little bit. And some bristles here. This is such a fun little Halloween project. A little bit more blue over in here. Okay, that's looking pretty fun and kind of eerie looking. So I am going to get that dry and get my pattern transferred on there and see what we're going to go from there. Now, I'm not normally the kind of person that likes to splatter, but because this is a night sky, I decided I would splatter. And so I've splattered some Calypso blue up here, and I'm also going to splatter some moon yellow, which is what we'll be using in our moon. I don't normally splatter because it makes such a huge mess. Not a big fan of the big mess it makes, but I think in this case it really needed it. So all I did was I took some of my paint and used a 1/2 inch filbert rake brush, and I even have you on camera here, and just thin the paint down, tap some of it off over, and then just start tapping like this over my piece. So now I'm going to get that dry and get the pattern on. Okay, I've got all my base coats on, so I'll just run through and tell you what colors I base coated in. The moon I based in moon yellow, the bats and the shoes with lamp black, the buckles with cocoa, the stockings on the witch's legs are based in lavender, and the stripes are tangelo orange. The pot is charcoal gray. The goo coming out of the pot is olive green. So get all your base coats on and make sure you erase all of your graphite lines, and then just transfer these lines down here onto the pot. And I put some eyes on the bats. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do there yet, since we're switching this up from the original piece here. I do love how this background turned out on this one. I think it is really going to make this look fabulous. One thing I want to mention about these boxes, I like to buy them up. Usually they have them at Hobby Lobby in the fall, and in the fall colors. And I like to either give them as a gift, put a gift in it, or the one thing that I really like to do is paint coasters that match the lid, and then just give a little gift set there. Something you can always have on hand to give when you need it. Okay, the brushes that I used to base coat all of these in, I used a 10-0 liner for this detail here. I used a 1 and a 2 Winsor Newton round. This liner is a low Cornell. And then I also used a 1/2 inch and a number 10 flat low Cornell brushes to base all of this stuff in here. Okay, we're going to start working on the moon first, since that is a new part to this project that I've added. And I'm going to start with spicy mustard. Really need to shake that up a little bit more. And we're going to dry brush around the moon with this color. So you're going to need a dry paper towel. And you're also going to need a scruffy or stencil brush of some kind. So I've got these low Cornell Crescent stencil brushes, and this is a size 3/8. Now to dry brush, you're going to take a completely dry little scruffy brush, and you're going to load it with your paint. So I've got paint on the end of it. Then I'm going to my dry paper towel, and I'm going to rub that off of there. Now if I need to, I can come back to this really wet spot and pick up some more paint, or I can just go over there and rub off. So I'm rubbing off almost all of the paint, even though there's still quite a bit in the brush. And I just want to come and start gently rubbing this around the moon to give the moon a glow. And we're just going to just gently rubbing. I know it probably looks like I'm putting a lot of pressure down on this brush, but I'm not. Okay, I'm going to go right back to this spot right here where a lot of paint came off at the beginning, and I'm going to load that onto my brush. Now I've got just a little bit too much. It left a little dark mark right there, and I want to bring this out a little bit more, softening it, making it kind of fade away, the glow of the moon. Okay, I want it to be a little bit darker right there next to the moon, so I'm going to pick up some more paint and wipe it off. Now, every time I go and get paint, when I come back to it, I always start with real easy pressure because I don't really know how hard that's going to come off, and I don't want to have it leave a stark mark on there. Okay, I think that's coloring that moon nicely. Now I want to pick up some cad yellow and go down the center of that moon. I'm just going to use the same brush. I'm just going to dirty brush right into cad yellow, and I will probably do this a couple of times because the first time, because it's a dirty brush, it will blend with the color that's in the brush and not make it as bright as what I want it to be. So I'm going to just go down the center of the moon, cad yellow. We're going to come back and float a little bit around the edge of the moon with a different color. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Bring up some cad yellow, rubbing it off. Gentle, gentle pressure to start. And you can start giving it a little more pressure as you can tell how much paint is on the brush and coming off. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. Brightening up that glow a little bit. I really want it to have some glow around it. Okay, I'm going to set this brush aside. I'm not going to clean it because I may be using it here again in a little bit, so before I clean it, I'm just going to set it aside because you don't want to use these brushes wet if you're dry brushing. So if I do wash it out, I'll have to have another brush to do this technique. But the paint probably will dry in that, so I'll have to be sure and take some cleaner and clean it later. Okay, I want to work on the legs here. I'm going to let that moon rest just a minute, and then we'll come back and do some more to it. Black plum is what I'm going to shade along the legs with. Now, when you float a shading, you need to have some water drops on your palette. So I usually put my water drops on this side of my palette. And I've got various size of water drops on there. I just sprayed it on with a little misting bottle you get in the travel section at your local store. And I like to use curved flats for floating. You can use an angle brush or a flat brush. This is a number 10 Low Cornell. And I really like them because I like how soft of a float they get. Now I'm going to dampen this brush in some water to kind of wake it up. Now I'm going to dry it. I'm just laying it on my paper towel to dry it. And make sure there's no water on the ferrule because we don't want that to run down onto our piece. So when I load this brush, I'm dipping the toe, or the pointed part, into the paint. Okay. Now I can already tell that I need water, so when I need water I'm going to pick up on this curved edge, which is the water side, and I'm just going to blend that. I've got a little bit too much, so I'm just going to lay it on my paper towel and let the excess come off. I just want a nice float. This is a different palette paper than I normally use, so it seems to be a little slicker. So I just want a nice variation of color right there. And how it looks right there is how it will probably look when I brush it on. And lay your brush flat. And you don't always have to feel like you have to get the float all at once. And I have a mop brush here, which I need to fluff it out. I cleaned it the other day and didn't re-fluff it. I'm just going to soften that float. turn and do the other side. Now this easel thing that I have my board on is called an Artist Buddy. You can buy them online from Amazon, from Artist Club, Creative Arts Lifestyle carries them. And they are really great when you're painting something and you're not constantly wanting to, flip your project this way and that way. Plus you can raise it to where it is different heights to get it closer to you, to get the glare off of it if there's a glare. Right now, because I put press and seal on the back of this board, it made it slick. So I put 2 pieces of painter's tape on the back in a loop so it would stick to the back of this and stick to the base of this. Normally you don't have to do that because of the way this is made. It holds anything on there. So you don't normally have to do that. But because this was slick on the back, I had to do that. So I'm just laying my brush flat. Soften that with my mop brush. I always use a mop brush when I float. And how you clean your mop brush is you take it to a damp place on your paper towel and you clean it off. And then you take it to a dry place or a dry paper towel and you dry it off. So my water has dried up, so I'm going to get some more water and reload. I tend to reload in the same spot where I originally started loading my brush. Okay, mop that gently. We'll probably come back and do that a second time. Just to give it a little bit more depth in there. A little more roundness. Now, when you're floating, you want to make sure, especially when you're doing anything with 4 sides, that the 2 sides, you do opposite sides. And you want to make sure that the 2 that you previously did, the 2 you started out with, are dry. Because if they're not dry, and you cut across them, then you'll just remove your float. And you will have to start the float all over again. So if you're not sure if they're dry, take a little fan or a blow dryer and just dry it very quickly. Float is, got a lot of water, so it won't take very long at all for it to dry. And I always keep one of these little fans handy. I got this at Walmart. Less than $2. Batteries are already in it. It's nice and quiet. You can take it to paint classes and not disturb anybody else or blow everybody's stuff all around. So a good little item to have in your paint kit. Okay, I want to do this again. I want to float them one more time. Still using the black plum. I just want to deepen that and get that roundness in there a little bit better. When I go back and pick up paint, if my brush is feeling dry, I pick up a drop of water or 2 on that water edge. And I got out of line there a little bit, so I just took a damp flat brush and wiped that back. Sometimes you don't always need a special tool to take care of something. Now I haven't determined what color the letters are going to be. On my original one, the letters I painted in with black, and then I did a shadow on the letters, a drop shadow on the left side with a Calypso blue. But I don't think that's the color I'm going to do on this one because I painted the background a different color. I need to carry that orange somewhere in here. So I'm not really sure where I'm going to use that. If I want to use it in the bat's eyes. I was originally going to use a red, but red is not on my palette for this. So I may use an orange for the eyes and maybe for the lettering, so I can carry that color. Now mop brushes come in different sizes, and they come in different colors. So that's a preference, personal preference. I like the white ones though, because I can really tell when I have paint in them, when I need to clean them. So I try to keep them cleaned as I go so that I don't have to, paint doesn't dry in them and I have to clean them later with soap and water. I think it's better on mop brushes if you're just going to use them for mopping and not painting. Some people do use them for painting. It's better to clean them as you go so you don't have to use that soap on there and worry about it drying in there and then your bristles not quite holding up the way that you want them to hold up. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So we'll let that dry a little bit before we add some highlighting on there. Now I want to go back up to my moon. I'm not sure how this is going to look. I may absolutely hate it. But I've got some burnt sienna. And I'm thinking I want to just barely float some of this onto the moon. So I'm going to have it. This is going to be a washy float, so I've got a lot more water than I would normally have, because it is almost like a transparent float. Okay, picking up a little bit more because I want to walk that in a little bit. Let me soften that. I don't think I'm going to do this edge. I think I'm going to keep it on this edge, and I think I'm going to walk it in. So I'm going to let that dry and walk some of that burnt sienna into that a little bit. Okay, let's go to the shoes. Calypso Blue is the color that we're going to use on the shoes. So we're going to be creating our highlight areas, and our shoes have these little places right here. So I'm just going to draw those in, and then so I know that when I float my highlight here, it's going to come down to that and around. So I'm using the same brush, the 10 curved flat. You could go to a larger one, a 12. They make a 6, a 10, and a 12. This is also the color that I'm going to use on the bats. So I want this to curve down onto this boot a little bit. I don't want it to come down too far. We're going to do the tops of the boots here. Mop, mop, mop. Unless I'm doing a teeny tiny little float where I don't need to mop, I tend to always mop my floats. Probably because I think I use more water than most people use for their floats. So if you have learned to float a specific way that you really like, don't try to mimic how I do it. Okay, also want to go up underneath here with this color. And we'll come back and deepen this. Okay, so right here. I'll go ahead and go underneath that buckle. I want to walk this out a little bit. So I'm just kind of tapping it into that water area. And then I'll take my mop brush and soften that. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Underneath the buckle. And then I'm just going to walk that out. And mop. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, I want to deepen up here on the shoe. I'm going to walk that up because this is a little bit bigger than my original piece, so I need that to come up just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do it. Deepen this a little bit. So this is self-shaded because it's black. Okay, a little bit more right here. It's not quite as dark right there. Okay, then we're going to take our liner brush and a little bit of that Calypso blue and a little bit of light buttermilk. First we want to, when you use a liner brush, it's very hard to use it with straight thick paint unless you're just putting a dot on something. So you want to dip into your water and go into the paint with that brush full of water and pull some out and make some of this thin, kind of like ink. Okay, I want to do that with the blue and the light buttermilk. A little bit too much water there, so I'll just mix a little bit more paint in with that. You want it to be about the consistency of ink. Anything thinner than that and it will just fade away into nothing, and anything thicker than that and it won't come off of your brush very well. It won't flow nicely. So after I thin it, I wash my brush out and I dry it off on the paper towel, and then I go load it so I don't have a whole bunch of excess water in my brush. So I just want to put a little bit of this onto this swirly part of the boot. I was running out of paint over here, so you probably can't even see it. And now with the, I'll on the shoes, I dry brushed some light buttermilk in there. But I think I'm going to do that with some blue first, some Calypso blue. So I've just got another different dry brush. This one is actually a Royal, a little scruffy brush. So I'm just going to dry brush some of this color next to where I have the color already. Just give that a little bit more. Make it a little wider. And now with the light buttermilk, the thinned light buttermilk, I'm going to just create, excuse me, some little highlights. I feel like I have too much paint, so I wiped it off and then reloaded it. Now you're staying up on the tip of the brush. And I think we'll do a little bit on there as well. Okay. Now, I do want to put a little bit of blue inside that buckle. So I'm taking up a round brush. This is number 1, round. And I'm going to just load some paint onto it and kind of flick it off on my brush. It's a dry brush. I did not dip it in water. So I'm just going to put some of this, roughly dry brush some of that in the center of those buckles right there. And this buckle, I can see, needs some adjustment with some black paint there. Okay, now to finish off the buckles and the shoes, on my original one I put Glamour Dust. Let's see if I said to shade any on the buckles. I did not shade on my original one with the buckles. I think because it was so small. But I think on this one I want to shade. Just because the buckles are a little bit bigger. You may not even see it after we get done because I'm going to put some Glamour Dust on here. So I'm going to use some soft black and shade right here on the buckles. Just with soft black. I think I'm going to do that one more time. I'd like it to be just a little bit darker. So maybe it will show up through that Glamour Dust when we put it on here. We're going to be using, the color of Glamour Dust that we're going to be using is Gold Glitz. And we're just going to brush it right onto the buckles. Gold Glitz. It's a Deco Art product. I like to shake it up really good because I don't know how much of that glitter has sunken down into the bottom of the bottle. Taking my round brush, my one round, and I'm just going to brush some of this on here. Now when it's dry, if it's not sparkly enough for me, I may want to come back and add a second coat onto this. that dry, I'm going to go back up to the moon. And this time, because I'm liking that color on there, I'm going to float it a little bit wider. So I'm going to lay my brush flat, walk it out a little bit. Mop that. Try to stay more in the water edge. Very softly. Okay, I'm going to let that dry on the moon, and then we're going to dry brush some of that color coming out. And then I think I'm going to come back with some cad yellow on this edge and a little bit of light buttermilk to brighten that edge of it up. Okay, let's work some more on the legs. Let's see. Okay, let me go to the second page here. I'm trying to follow my directions that I originally did, but well, on my original piece, I don't have it in my instructions, so I'm going to have to change that, looks like. In the purple here, well, maybe that's because I dry brushed down the center. Okay. Dry brush down the center. It looks like I use light buttermilk. I'm going to dry brush down the center first with lavender, and then I'm going to go back and do it with light buttermilk. So I want to get a bigger stencil brush. I'm going to go with this one here. So I'm going to use lavender first. Some loose hairs there I want to get out. You will lose hairs on these stiff brushes. Just the way they are, because they're so stiff. So I've loaded my brush and wiped off the excess paint. So I'm going to dry brush down the center. This is lavender. It almost looks like I used light buttermilk going across there. So let me do that. Light buttermilk. This is a much smaller brush. I'm going to go, yeah. That looks much better. I'm going to go across the purple and the orange with this color, but I'm doing them individually because I don't want them, I don't need too much right there. I don't want them to look like, well, I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, like they're connected. I want them to look like individual stripes here. We will connect them by doing a highlight down the center. I'm just using more pressure to get more paint off of the brush. Okay, now I'm going to use that same color and go up and down like this. I think I'm going to have to float my shading over just a little bit more. Okay, that's with light buttermilk. Wash this other brush out. Try not to let the paint set in them if I can help it. Okay, let's go up to the moon. I'm going to use the brush that I used earlier on the moon, that I used for the yellow. It's a little bit bigger, scruffy brush, but that's okay. Alright, I want to just bring this out just a little bit. Okay, we put some of this into the background here. That little golden glow. Now I want the cad yellow. And I'm going to dry brush this on the outer edge. Keep on camera here, my easel thing is sliding all over. Okay, I'm working it over into that darker color I just put on there, just so that I can blend them and make them cohesive. Now I've got light buttermilk. I'm putting some of that on. I'm going to bring this into the background a little bit, give it a little bit brighter glow back here. I think we will take some of the cad yellow and dry brush it onto the shoes. Okay, so cad yellow, I'm picking that up on my brush. Same brush, I'm just dirty brushing. So I want to put some of this on the shoes. Alright, so I've gone and added some of the cad yellow highlights onto the shoes and the bats. I just floated that on and then did the shading with the Calypso blue on the bat. And then their eyes I based in with Tangelo orange, and then I went over them with Tiger orange, Glamour Dust. So now we're going to go down here and work on the pot. And the letters I based in with Tangelo orange. So on the pot here we want to shade around the edges with lamp black. Underneath the rim, so we're going to go down the outer edges, and I'm using the number 12 curved flat. I'm going to walk that over a little bit, and then mop that. Okay, I'm going to do the other side. Picking up more paint and more water. A little bit more water and paint. My brush started running out way too soon, so I needed a little bit more of both water and paint on my brush there. Walk it out. Gently mop that. Clean my mop brush. I want to go underneath the rim. I need to make sure this float is dry first, because I don't want to cut through it. So we're going to go underneath the rim. Right up to the green there. More water and paint. See, I ran out of both right there. Soften that. And let me clean that black out of that green. I don't really want that in there. See if I can help it. Okay. Let's go under over here. I'm just going to go right through that little drop of gooey stuff that's coming out of the pot, because I haven't basted in yet. deepen that in the middle there. Did not come down as far as I want it to come down. Let's see, I can do this and keep you on camera here. So, let's walk that down a little bit. I'm going to go to my smaller curved flat and go up underneath the gooey stuff coming out of the pot. The green witch's brew. Okay, I'm going to switch to a 6 curved flat. And this will get me a tight little float underneath. All of this stuff here. Okay, and I also want to float down here underneath the green. And even though I haven't painted those little drops that are coming off of it, I'm going to go ahead and float some black underneath those while I am floating. Just have those done. Around each drop that's coming off. Now we're going to go and do the handles. I need probably to zoom you in, but I've learned that every time I zoom in, I get out of frame terribly. So I have another piece of equipment that I'm in the process of purchasing to make that a little bit easier. So I can zoom in and I'll be able to see a little bit better what I'm doing and not get you off frame. Okay, I want to do this one over here. Well, let's see. Let's just spin it all the way around. Try the best way to do this where you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm going on the inside of the top part of the handle and on the outside of the bottom part of the handle. So, we're going to use some of that Calypso blue and do a little bit of shade highlight because it's dark. I don't want to use anything real bright. So this is going to give me the right color that I want on here. So this is going on the outer edge on the top, the inner edge on the bottom. Okay, let's go ahead and get those green drips painted in. They're olive green. And I think I'm going to walk my shading in a little bit more on the edges. just using a number 1 round brush here. Now when I did my lettering up above, I used this same brush. You could use a 10-0 liner or whatever kind of liner you like to use. But whatever it is that you choose to use, you need to stay up on the tip of it. And keep the brush straight up and down, just like I'm doing right here. I'm keeping my brush straight up and down, and I'm staying up on the tip. So one more up here. Okay, and you can add as many drips. I mean, you can have a pool of it down here on the ground if you want, which who knows, I may come back and add that when I get done here. Alright, I want to whiten that float with the lamp black using the 12 curved flat or whatever brush you like to float with. A larger brush is going to, don't want to get out lines. So I'm just going to walk this in. And take my mop brush, starting in the water part, and just gently soften that. Just barely tapping. Let's go around and do the other side. Okay, I'm running out of paint and water, so I'm going to pick up both. Why we keep water drops on our palette over here, so we can go suck up some water on that water edge of the brush. Okay, walk that over, and then starting in the water edge, and then as you get into where there's more paint, just barely mop that, because you don't want to remove the paint. You're just softening that, blending it down. Okay, that looks much better. Okay, I think one more time I'm going to float around those little drops, because a couple of my drops got bigger than I wanted them to get. I need to get the water out of my little number 6 curved flat, or you can use a 1/8 inch angle brush. Since I started using these brushes, I hardly ever use a regular angle brush anymore. I just love how they float, how soft they make it. I just don't know what it is about the way these are cut that makes it so much nicer. So I really encourage you, if you have the chance, use a coupon and try some out. Okay, I think on my handle I might need to shade that just a little bit more because it's not defined enough for me. Okay, now we're going to put some of this blue up here. And I think on my original piece I floated it. I'm going to erase my graphite line here real quick. You want to erase your graphite lines as you go, because if you don't, they will get set in your paint, and as long as you don't paint over them, they'll come off. But once you get paint on them, they're pretty much in the project. Okay, I'm going to use a 1/8 inch crescent stencil brush. It's a low Cornell. I'm dry brushing, so I picked up the paint on my brush, wiping it off on a dry paper towel. We're going to do these areas right in here. So I'm just going to rub some of this in here. I don't want to cover up all my shaded areas. I'm just going to intensify that just a little bit. We're going to come back and add some burnt orange in here too. Okay, and I also want to take this color in some random areas down in here. So I start scrubbing with easy pressure, and then a little bit harder as I start losing paint. You know, as I'm leaving less paint, I give more pressure because I know there's still paint in the brush. So I start scrubbing a little bit more. And you just kind of pick and choose where you want this color to be. Let's see, I had a little bit more paint in my brush there, and when I went to rub, it left a little bit starker mark, but I think that's going to be alright for this particular project. Okay, now I'm going to dirty brush into some burnt orange. I'm not even going to clean my brush off. And we're going to put some of this color on there. The Tangelo orange was just too bright. So I'm going to dip into that paint a couple of times, and it will help remove most of that blue out of there. So I can have a nice rusty orange color. This is just going to give it some rust on the pot, wherever you want some rust to be. Put some on the handle. You could just float this on the handle if you wanted. Now you could go up to a bigger stencil brush or scrubby brush if you wanted to. I'm just staying with this one because I just want to leave a little bit off at a time. I don't want to create too stark, too dramatic of a... Okay, we're just going to keep this looking kind of rusty. Now I think on the upper edges up here, we'll float a little bit of black just to define those edges a little bit. So we'll do along this edge. And this edge, we won't see too much of it, but I'll put some there. Okay, and I can take this brush and dip into some black and work that in over that orange. And maybe come in here and add a little bit more of that black here and there. So this is where you can just kind of play around with it and kind of make it your own little... I want all the black to be covered up. Okay, I think I need my orange to be just a little bit brighter. So, let's see if I can do that over this black that's in the brush. I may have to get a new brush. I'm just going to load the brush and work out that black on a dry paper towel. I'm loading it into the burnt orange, and then when I get to where it's just the burnt orange color coming off of the brush, I know I've got enough in there. that looks pretty good for our pot down there. So I'm going to clean this brush a little bit because I don't think I'm going to be using it again. I'm going to work on the green here. I think real quickly I will brush a coat of that green along those edges. We're going to shade that, but I've got some orange and other colors on there that I don't really want to be on there. So just a quick little coverage of paint to get that back to its original color. I'm just using my little angle brush, my curved flat actually, and just putting some on the toe because I'm just going around the edges a little bit. Okay. I am going to put out some, what color? House or dark green. So we're going to shade on this. So we're going to shade along the bottom of it, and I see I need to put some of my pot color back in here, which was graphite, because this right through here, it needs to come along the front of this. So I may have to do this with black and then put graphite on it. We'll see. This off right here. I don't want that so much there because the green is oozing over. Ooh. Right there. But I need a straight line. So dry that and put another coat of graphite on there. And after I work the green, I'll come back and float some black in there to set that really back. Okay, I'm going to let that dry and come back to that. Alright, on the green. Hauser dark green. I'm staying with this 10 curved flat. And so we're going to float along the bottom edges. Laying my brush flat as I get to bigger areas and walk it up. Mop that, soften it. So this is where you've got these bigger parts and you can decide which little drooping bubble lays on top of the other one. And you could put some pumpkins down by the base of this. A little frog would be cute. Okay, I want to put a little highlight on top of these. I know on my original one I did not use this particular color, so I'll be changing my instructions to match this. But I've got some citron green, which is just a little bit brighter than that olive green. And I want to put that across the top. You won't see it too much at first. Just right across the top. I want to bring a little bit of that down into some of these bigger ones. I just use my water edge to soften it back wherever I stop. Okay, that's giving a little bit more electrifying look on there. This handle down here, I need just a little bit more blue on it. So. Okay, while that green is drying, I'm going to float inside the pot with some black. I think on my original one I just painted the whole inside of it in with black because, you know, it's kind of set back in there and shadowed. So I think that's what I'm going to do here. It's just if you wanted inside there, you could give a little illusion of some green, of this green back in there. You could even have some of this splashing up on her legs if you wanted. Okay, I'm going to take the citron green and mix it with a little bit of light buttermilk to lighten that. Go on the top here. And after I get along the edge here, I want to make that look like it's more dripping over. So I'm going to take my brush and bring it down into that. This is citron and light buttermilk mixed together. Now I want to create a glaze. Let me dry that. I'm going to create a glaze of the citron green. And just glaze over the whole thing. I need to come down here and shade on my drips down here. I also need to put some yellow reflected from the moon down here, as well as into my pot itself. So let me get some yellow. Some little highlight on this side where the moon would be. I'm kind of tapping it and very gently rubbing it all at the same time. This is still that dry brushing technique where I load the brush and then wipe out any excess. Reflection down here maybe. I want to make sure that looks like yellow. So if it's blending back in there too much, I need to go over it. Alright, now I want to put some of this in my green here. I don't know if the dry brushing will help it show up much. I may have to float this up here. A little bit more. We're going to put glamour dust on this green here, so it's going to be, I still want that to be a little bit bright. There we go. Just a little bit bright to that. let's put some glamour dust on our green here, and we are going to use neon green as the color. Neon green. So we're just going to brush that over the whole green area down here. And I still haven't shaded my little drops yet, so I need to do that. And then they will also get this green on them. Just covering the whole thing. I love these glamour dust paints. We're just giving a little bit of sparkle in there. Okay, let me go down here and finish my little drips here. Okay, a couple of things that I did to finish this off was I glazed over my moon with some burnt orange. I deepened the glow on the bats and the shoes with the cad yellow. I had to do it a couple more times to get it as bright as I wanted it to be. And then on the lettering, after I base coated it with Tangelo orange, on the top I just streaked a little bit of either, you can use spicy mustard or moon yellow, either one of those. And then on the bottom I just did a little bit of soft black. So that finished up the letters. And I think that just about finishes this project up. I hope that you enjoy doing it. The pattern packet will have both this particular technique, the way that I painted it here, and the original, so you'll actually be getting two patterns in one packet. So I hope that you enjoy painting this.